There's been a lot of coverage of Donald Trump pardoning the January 6th rioters, and people are rightly outraged. But there was another pardon in Trump's first week that's a bit more interesting, that of Ross Ulbricht, the creator of the Silk Road drug marketplace. This is a pardon that Trump promised to make during the campaign when he was speaking at the Libertarian National Convention to try and win the votes of what's ordinarily a pretty government-skeptical group. When he was at that conference, this is how it initially went down. There were some people chanting his name. It seemed like there were other people booing him, maybe suspicious of someone who wanted to enter government. These are the Libertarians, of course. But everyone seemed to get on board when he made this promise.
And if you vote for me on day one, I will commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht to a sentence of time served.
You can see lots of people there with free Ross sort of posters in the crowd. The case of Ross Ulbricht is one very close to libertarian hearts. In 2013, he became the poster boy of anti-government and pro-individual liberty values. And when he was arrested as the creator of a dark web drugs market called Silk Road, the site was deeply anonymized, with users having to pay in Bitcoin to avoid detection, as they made untraceable purchases of illicit items, including drugs. Ulbricht, who went under the name Dead Pirate Roberts online, was charged with a range of felonies, but his reputation as a libertarian folk hero was cemented when extracts of his writings formed part of the prosecution's case against him. They included this from his LinkedIn account. "Now my goals have shifted. I want to use economic theory as a means to abolish the use of coercion and aggression amongst mankind. Just as slavery has been abolished most everywhere, I believe violence, coercion, and all forms of force by one person over another can come to an end. The most widespread and systemic use of force is amongst institutions and governments, so this is my current point of effort. The best way to change a government is to change the minds of the governed, however. To that end, I am creating an economic simulation to give people a first-hand experience of what it would be like to live in a world without the systemic use of force." Now, the reason I'm giggling is because, the way he's talking about this, it's as if sort of he was creating this brilliant future society. And when you use Silk Road, you'd realize you don't need the state anymore. Well, using Silk Road is just, looking for drugs or guns or not. I tried to use it once. I never managed to make a purchase because I always struggled to fill up my Bitcoin wallet. I wish I had, and I had some left over and then I'd be rich. But I never managed to buy the Bitcoin. But the idea that you go on that website and think, yes, we don't need the state, let's have anarchism. So it's just strikes me as a little bit bizarre. Anyway, in 2015, Ulbricht was convicted of distributing narcotics, engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise, conspiring to commit computer hacking and conspiring to create fake identities and launder money. The then 31-year-old was sentenced to a life in prison without the possibility of parole. At the time of his conviction, the US Justice Department also went after some of Ulbricht's associates who claimed to have committed 5 murders on his behalf. Though, this is significant, the state was never able to prove the killings ever took place. So I don't think they ever, they said they'd killed people for him. They couldn't even prove that anyone had been killed, let alone that he'd ordered it. Libertarian supporters have long campaigned for Ulbricht's release, arguing that he was an independent thinker with a peaceful and gentle nature. And on a website for his supporters, they posted this video of Ulbricht shortly before his arrest.
Pretty sure I want to start a family in the next 5 years.
Nice, okay.
Just make more friends and close people I love. Yeah, I want to focus on being more connected to people.
Very good. And 20 years.
20 years. I want to have had a substantial positive impact on the future of humanity by that time.
Trump's pardon commutes Ulbricht's sentence with time served. Posting on Truth Social about Ulbricht's commutation, he said this: I just called the mother of Ross William Ulbricht to let her know that in honor of her and the Libertarian movement, which supported me so strongly, it was my pleasure to have just signed a full and unconditional pardon of her son, Ross. The scum that worked to convict him were some of the same lunatics who were involved in the modern-day weaponization of government against me. He was given 2 life sentences plus 40 years. Ridiculous! To be honest, I do agree that 2 life sentences plus 40 years is ridiculous, but it is also kind of strange to have a system whereby because some people supported you, you pardon their hero. Seems to be what happened here. On Wednesday, the now 40-year-old, Ulbricht posted this. So it appears to be Ross Ulbricht leaving prison with what looks like quite a nice, modest plant. Aaron, I hadn't thought about Silk Road for a while before this story broke. And it did remind me of sort of a period in the early 2010s when people really thought like Bitcoin, Silk Road, this was the future. I suppose it was sort of like post-financial crisis when sort of anarchism was kind of a bit more in vogue. How have your thoughts evolved on this? What were you thinking about Silk Road and Bitcoin back then?
I felt like there was clearly a shift away from the state's ability to exercise a monopoly on coercion and legitimate violence. I think that was the thing. You felt that power was draining away from the state, right? The sort of the state orthodoxy, the economic orthodoxy had been dismantled by '08. You get Bitcoin, you get all these radical ideas about how to do things differently, from Occupy to the Pirate Bay. You still have at this point, prior to 2011, really, the idea of a productive commons. Those kinds of debates were in play, right? A different kind of way of doing production and sharing outside of property relations. If you're on the left or if you're on the right, beyond the surveillance and potential coercion of the state, which is where the Silk Road comes in. So there was a massive political bent to all of this stuff, and it wasn't just limited to the right. That's really, really important to say. Although I have to say, Michael, in 2025, just reading that thing you posted a few moments ago about a world beyond coercion and violence, it's just mad, isn't it? It is just mad. I know he means institutional coercion, which is to say, yes, there'll always be violence and coercion in the world, but we shouldn't have institutions like the state which reproduce forms of coercion and violence. But anyway, it's not my bag. I know you used to be an anarchist, Michael. It's not my bag. I always sort of define myself as a libertarian socialist, libertarian communist. I think the state is a necessary evil, right? Which is kind of actually a kind of liberal view. You need it. Doesn't mean that you worship it and that it has the problems, the answer to everything, but it's necessary, even if it sometimes does curtail individual liberties. Yes, it's necessary. Anyway. In terms of Trump pardoning this, it's really interesting because in the 2024 election, the Libertarian Party, which is a significant party, only got, I think, about 600,000 votes. If you go back to 2020, they got 1.8 million votes. So is that the difference in the end between Trump winning or not in 24? Not really. But in a really close election, it absolutely would make a difference. And, if the Libertarian vote was like what it was 4 years earlier, I mean, I don't know the numbers. Maybe he loses Wisconsin. I don't think so. I mean, that was pretty close. That was the closest state, right? Maybe he does. But, you can look at a few different variables, and that is certainly one of them. That is certainly one of them, and something he, as a party strategist, got on top of, political strategist got on top of. And I maybe this is something we're going to talk about. I find it really interesting that somebody like Trump, who's viewed as iconoclastic and narcissistic, well, you know what? He tried to build a really big tent. He reached out to what would be viewed by the Republican establishment, or much of the Republican establishment, certainly by the sort of media establishment, as an irrelevance. He reached out to libertarian voters. Why is there such a markedly different attitude between Trump doing that with libertarian voters and Kamala Harris and the left?
Ross Ulbricht was very much at the forefront of the crypto movement when some people still saw it as emancipatory. Trump himself surely represents the final death knell of that dream. In the run-up to his inauguration, Trump launched his own meme coin called Trump on his platform Truth Social. These coins are completely useless. You can't buy anything with them. But MAGA fans flooded in, and the market cap of all Trump coins went up to $15 billion. Trump owned 80% of them. So in theory, he just made upwards of $10 billion in a day. Of course, if he'd tried to sort of convert those into dollars and sold those Trump coins, then the value would have collapsed. So it's not necessarily the case that he could have immediately converted that into cash, but still, that's quite a lot of market value to make in a day. The value has also since fallen. But asked about the coins at a White House press conference, Trump seems satisfied.
I don't know much about it other than I launched it. I heard it was very successful. I haven't checked it. Where is it today?
You made a lot of money, sir.
How much?
Several $1 billion, it seems like, in the last several days.
Several billion? That's peanuts for these guys.
So Trump was in a room with tech CEOs when he said that. Hence the joke about a few billion being peanuts. Whether MAGA fans will find it so amusing when they realize they've blown money on something essentially worthless is another matter. But beyond scamming his fans, a former Trump employee suggested there could be a more dangerous motive behind Trump launching his own digital currency.
The bigger concern, Aaron, is that the way the cash moves here, it moves almost directly to Trump. And so it can be used just like his hotels were used in the first administration, where the foreign countries and wealthy people used his hotels to gain favor. Well, this is a perfect vehicle, okay? Because you can literally, a country could go in and buy $10 million worth of crypto coin, Trump's crypto coin, and he's the beneficiary of this. I think it's just flat out dangerous for national security that, that he could be influenced like this.
I mean, one thing that does, I think, separate Donald Trump from other presidents is how shamelessly he does use the office to line his own pockets. Aaron, I have to say, I mean, obviously it's outrageous, it's terrible. But sometimes I'm reassured when I feel like Trump is just trying to use the office of the White House to get himself richer, because I feel like if he was, more focused on some of his more political aims, that would be more damaging for the rest of us. If he just manages to pocket, a few extra million quid while in the White House, maybe that's a lucky break.
I think that's right. I mean, this is a hallmark of somebody who's not that serious, and he's just trying to make a lot of money. If you look at the great sort of politicians who reconfigured their societies, I mean, a great one is Ataturk. No children, selfless for the people. Here's Trump, creating a coin and bringing in lots of cash. I think that's right. Sort of politically, for people who don't agree with him, that they look at the project which he's a part of, which he leads, which is a really serious, impressive project in many ways, right? Elon Musk is the wealthiest person in the world who's basically backing him. And then you see something as ridiculous and as trivial as this. I know lots of money's involved, but politically it's trivial. And you think, phew, he's obviously going to do some pretty bad stuff. He is a serious person. He's the president of the United States. He's obviously a tremendously effective political operator. Phew, he does ultimately care, I think, more about, I could be wrong, I think he cares more about money than legacy. And actually, if you're worried about him, changing lots of things for the worse, that's probably a good thing.
Keep the man distracted. That seems to be sort of my best hope for the next 4 years.